All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the STLI podcast. Guess we'll go around and just introduce ourselves. I'm Grace.
I'm Joan.
I'm Denise.
I'm Leah.
And today we are going to be doing a little bit of just a conversation around dance, performance pedagogy, and just kind of innovation and collaboration inside of the classroom and outside of the classroom, specifically with Orchesys, the modern dance company. So first and foremost, I guess we'll just kind of get things started with going back to like the basics and kind of how you guys approach teaching within the classroom. I've been fortunate enough to have taken Modern 1 with Leah and Modern 2 with Joan, and it's been, I guess, a couple years now. But when I took Modern 1, that was before the pandemic.
Right.
And then taking Modern 2 was in the height of the pandemic. And so things looked very different from the student perspective. So I didn't know if you guys wanted to talk on just kind of your approach from a faculty perspective, and we can kind of like just start there.
Oh, as far as during the pandemic, teaching via Zoom was extremely challenging in some ways, many ways actually. But there are a few really fabulous things that came out of that. It taught me and my students how to articulate our needs, what we're looking for, in more detail. So that's fabulous. I learned how to break things down in a way that I hadn't been breaking them down before. So when I teach movement in person, you break the movement down depending upon the level in a certain way. Well, via Zoom, you actually have to be really close to the camera so they see a part of your body. And so that's really my experience teaching via Zoom. But since then, with Orchesys, I was able to work with students on a community quilt project. And we used their stories that they created through fabric and glue as inspiration for choreography. And then those quilt pieces were projected on the screen, on the backdrop. And so that was a really interesting approach for me. I'd never done anything like that before. And it allowed the students to engage in their own stories and sort of engage in a level of kinesthetic empathy that they hadn't engaged in through a couple of different mediums. And the other fabulous thing about this quilt project is in April, the other community groups who have participated in this quilt project, which is being conducted by Steve Prince over at the Buscarelli, they'll be able to show their quilt projects along Dog Street with the rest of the community and engage with the community in that way as well. So I would say being more intentional about how my choreography, my work engages with the community is a big step forward for me as well.
For me, when the pandemic first struck, shall we say, affected our classes, and we were mid-semester, we were at the point where we usually in all of our classes, in the lower level classes, have choreographic compositional projects that they work on together collaboratively. And because of the pandemic, they could not be together to work collaboratively. So they were, instead of getting to partner and be around each other in this space, we had to shift gears and figure out how to do collaborative creative projects over Zoom and between the students. And so for one of the projects that we did, I've been experimenting and working on dance on film for about 10 years, more than 10 years now, which is very convenient when we had to go online and deal with technology. I already had an understanding of editing and storyboarding. Mm-hmm. And so I actually had my students, we selected a piece of music, and they each had four measures or six or however many measures to create their own work according to the music, the inspiration of the music. But then they had to learn 2 measures of another student's part, and they had to then put them together. So they overlapped. We were able to make a film that connected the stories of each of the students. but they had to work collaboratively on learning one other person's part and then putting them together, overlapping, so it made my editing much easier. So getting to use that technology, but still have the students collaborate when they were not in the same space was interesting to me, and we were all surprised how successful the project actually was.
I think I found the change in the fact that we couldn't be in contact to be a big change. So pre-pandemic, for instance, in my Alexander Technique class, I used my hands to teach as well as verbally. So during the pandemic, teaching that class completely with verbal guidance it surprised me, because it's a signature of the Alexander Technique that the teacher is using their hands, and here it turns out, no, it's not necessary as the only way to teach. And I'm finding now that we're back in the studio together and I can use my hands again, that I don't do that as much, that I've found that students have a sense of that they are the source of the change that they can make for themselves, that has sort of transferred over from the pandemic, the separation year, if you will. They have more of a sense that they are the source of the change they can bring to themselves, and that's because I'm teaching a little bit differently from what I learned.
Yeah, that is all so fascinating. And I think like something that I'm hearing as a common thread through each of your experiences through the pandemic is that, you know, as these changes were occurring and as things were kind of looking different, you had to explore new ways to teach, new ways to reach students, new ways to connect. But all of that like had to happen through collaboration. And, you know, you had to be willing to reach out to one another. You had to be willing to collaborate in new ways, and maybe ways that you had never done before, in order to make these projects, these pieces, in order to teach, you know, something that's already a very collaborative process. So I guess just a question for anyone and everyone, you know, in what ways has collaboration in your minds changed? You know, maybe even talking on how you collaborated like already in the classroom, you know, how this department is unique in that sense, and, you know, even through the pandemic, how it's grown even more so collaborative.
Well, I think the dance program is unique in that when we're teaching, we all teach all levels of these technique classes. And I think that it starts from a collaborative place. It starts from a similar syllabus where we know we can rely that if someone takes a beginning Modern 1 class, that all of us are covering the basics in our own way, in our unique ways, unique styles, but we cover the basics so that everybody knows that someone coming into that next level of Modern 2 will have that same foundation of a Modern 1 class, although they may have learned it in a very different style. So we start in that way with our classes, and yet, you know, you could take Modern 1 twice with a different professor and it's going to be a different class. So we already had a foundation like that for the whole program from beginning to advanced. We also collaborate a lot with our students who are dance minors and are in the dance company orchestras. And maybe Joan or Leah wants to develop that a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah, pre-pandemic and post and during pandemic, what is pandemic, and post-ish pandemic, I think all three of the dance faculty here collaborate together to produce both the faculty concert and the student concerts, and mentoring the students on the 2 student concerts. So we produce 3 concerts a year, and every year. And I forget how incredible that is because it's our normal. It's our normal. And so when we advise our students, it's not a divided thing where we each take a few students, but rather we're looking at the concert as a whole, and all of us are participating with meeting with each of the student choreographers to give feedback and to help them build their pieces. During the pandemic, I think it's interesting that we would have them work with student lighting designers normally, that didn't happen when we were needing to put everything online, but we then switched over to student videographers being their partners. So the principles of collaboration stayed the same, even though the medium that we worked in had to change.
Right. They are, those principles are inherent in what we do, and I feel have always been. There's also been some collaboration. I mean, we've all collaborated with other faculty on campus as well in producing work on Orchesis. And I think that, you know, it only adds another layer of richness when it comes to the interaction between students, faculty, and the creative and production process.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And, you know, I think that what is so unique is that, especially like in talking about Orchesis as a, you know, a modern dance company, is that a lot of the collaboration that you guys do, you know, reaches beyond just students and faculty, but also reaches into the community. You know, I know, Leah, that you've done a lot with the Muscarelli Museum and with Steve Prince and with a lot of pieces that have to do with Black history and kind of sharing those narratives and working in the greater community. I know we've been, just as a Williamsburg community, working to create, you know, a larger project around this. You know, with the Bray School has recently been uncovered, and there's a lot of exciting work going to be done there. You know, the Lemon Project that's been ongoing, and just there's a lot that, you know, Orchesis as dance and as a medium has been able to kind of reach that goes beyond just this department, and I think kind of speaks a lot to collaboration.
Sure. Yeah. I'm excited about. We have guest artists coming in the spring. We have Bernard Gaddis and Contemporary West Dance Theater, as well as Lucky Plush, and her name just went out of my head.
Julia Rhodes
from Lucky Plush, and both residencies are collaborative in a lot of ways. I mean, they'll be doing master classes, and students will be creating and participating in, you know, and observing as well. But that's another level of research that I think is unique to a program like ours that only offers a minor.
Yeah, and I think actually all three of us have, with our professional work off campus at different times, been able to invite students to join us as well. So whether Leah developing her 9 project or Denise's video dance or my physical theater work, we do find space for students to experience professional level work. I mean, I think we're pretty demanding even even when we're working on campus. I think that we you know, want to encourage them to come to their highest level, but there's a way that we can share what we do in multiple ways.
Yeah. Currently, my company is made up of primarily William & Mary alums, but I also have several professional artists who join us for performances, and I currently have 3 William & Mary students as apprentices, and one of them, Grace Parita, just did a presentation for my Call 100 course entitled Movement as Communication on my Little Rock 9 piece, which she is performing in, and she did some research, and she did a lot of she interviewed some of the other contributors, Dr. Hermine Pinson, who wrote poetry from English, and Jamel Donner from the School of Ed, who did sort of the historical context for some of our artist talks. And she really, really did a wonderful job making connections between her work and research on that piece to what my students in movement and communication have been doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think, you know, that kind of cross-disciplinary approach is also so special and unique specifically to this dance department. You know, I don't know of, at least, and I mean, I'm biased, I go here obviously, but I don't know of a lot of dance departments that, you know, do this and allow their students to kind of step outside of just the dance department and work, you know, in a lot of different artistic mediums to still communicate these like central movement kind of principles and expressions. And like Joan, I know with, your Confronted series, having SL Feemster come down and work with Orchesis to actually create a spoken word piece that was the backing for the previous concert.
Yeah, he developed that, a poem for my company's solely digital piece during the summer, our pandemic piece, if you will. And he's also an alum of William & Mary. So I was grateful when he came and was willing to lend that backing track and reapply poetry that was originated by the students and help them. Basically, as he described it to me, it made him thinking about what process he used, and to set it up so that the students could go through that process in their own way. And then that material, those recordings that we made on my cell phone and could edit together, actually came out quite beautifully.
Yeah.
And it became and I think that it helped them understand then when they performed the movement and heard each other's voices, it carried a different meaning than when I had simply structured the movement and they knew the source, but they didn't necessarily have a connection to it until they created it.
I think one of the strengths of our dance program is the fact that the faculty in their professional work and also in their work with students in Orchesis for the dance event concerts, where it's faculty choreographed and student performed, that we model for the students experimentation and the fact that it's okay to try something and have it fail or not be the same thing you thought it was going to be when you started out, because that's part of research, is that you may discover
Exactly.
something new and different than what you intended. But then they have the opportunity in both the second concert, in the concert in the spring, Evening of Dance, and in our Dance Minors concert, to take what they've seen modeled and run with it. That was a good example during the pandemic where faculty were figuring out what to do in the fall and how to present a concert online. And then the students came back with wonderful, creative, inventive works on film for their spring concert. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for students that isn't available with most programs that just have a dance minor.
Yeah.
If anything, because we don't have a major and can devote time to whoever has the passion rather than whoever needs the coursework, we have amazing flexibility in our program because it's a minor and because Orchesis isn't required to be students aren't required to be focused only on dance. In fact, it's better if they're not focused only on dance. What are you going to make your dance about? Dance? You need to make your dances about all the other things in your life that matter to you, and we hope that we model that as well.
Yeah, I would say you guys do. And as someone who's taken, several courses in the dance department and loves to stick around, whether that's through videography or collaboration with the students, I would say you guys model collaboration, innovation, and just expression through art and movement in just such a beautiful way. So thank you guys so much for having this conversation today around collaboration, around dance and performance, and just kind of the department that we have here at William & Mary.
Thank you so much for
Grace.
having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.